All right, welcome to today's episode of the Australian Lawn and Garden Podcast. And look, I think it's going to be a good one because we had to stop ourselves from talking just to get started. Like, that's how much fun we're having already. We've got Craig Sullivan from Hedgehog. It's Hedgehog Gardens, isn't it, Craig?
It is. Hey, it's Hedgehog Gardens, actually.
Hedgehog Gardens.
Yeah.
I know. I'm on your Instagram right now, but I'd scrolled down so far, I couldn't see your name. And you think after how many episodes I've done, I'd be somewhat professional. It's all an illusion.
That's it's every time it makes it to a magazine or something like that, it's always spelled wrong. It's fun. Yeah.
I feel like how do you get hedgehog wrong? You know, there's some names you could get wrong, but that's especially for a magazine. Oh, yeah, having said that, you know,
I think maybe it's a silly name, but it's stuck and it's the name now. So that's what it is. It's Hedgehog's Gardens, but you know, Hedgehogs, Gardens, Hedges, Topiary. You know, it's a silly name perhaps.
Let's not get onto Topiary right now, or Topiary, or whatever we call it.
Topiary,
I don't even know.
Or whatever
Topiary. Yeah. That sounds like psychiatry. It sounds like, you know, I need to have a certain level of, I don't know, psychological understanding to do that. Now, I'm going to go through these photos because people aren't interested in watching this podcast for us to talk about, silly words. They're interested in this podcast because some of the work that you do when it comes to all things hedges, balls, spirals, everything. I'm scrolling through Instagram. People, if you're just listening to this, honestly, pause the podcast and go on Hedgehog's Gardens, no spaces, nothing else. About 5,500, almost 6,000 on there, because this stuff that we're doing, that you're doing, it's right up there with some of the best people in the country. And I enjoy these types of conversations because this isn't really my world, but I love it. You know, there's certain things in gardens. I really love hedges. I've talked about this before. There's something about taking a natural thing and making it into like a geometrical shape that just doesn't exist in nature. Like striping up lawns, perfectly straight hedges. Like when you see in France when they've got, I think it's the province where they've got all those, what's the purple lavender? Have you seen those lavender fields with the straight rows of lavender and there's something about that is so attractive. And that's what you do with your hedges. It's just going through some photos here for people watching, like the color, the shapes, oh mate, it's awesome. I love it.
I guess it's, it doesn't have to all be straight, straight and formal, I guess. But if you're going to do formal, you need to do it. In my eyes, it needs to be done properly. It needs to be 100%. And if you're doing, like that, you need to get your lines right. You need to get symmetry. You're trying to get some sharp points. You want one looking the same as the one next to it. You want a good pair. You can get a bit more creative and loose with it as well, which is the other side of Topiary, which that is probably what I love more. But if you're going to do formal and straight and sharp, you need to do it properly. That's in my eyes. Yeah.
So I'm looking at a photo here. For those who are listening, we've got beautiful. Are these Buxus?
Yeah, Buxus japonica.
Beautiful Buxus on a slant. They're all perfectly parallel with each other. And then we've got some, I guess you'd call them cones, or they're not quite. There's a bit of a curve to them, kind of like teardrops almost. Beautiful shape. And I'm just looking at that, and the thing that I'm amazed by is how crisp the tip of this is, because I think that it's not just that you got to be able to run a hedge straight. I understand that, but that's a lot of training to not have it be sort of frazzled and kind of, the what I'm talking about. Like you can get, say a lily pilly, for example, which is obviously not as dense as a Buxus. If you try to do that on that, you wouldn't get that point. It almost looks like I could hurt myself, how sharp that point is. There's things like that which I really appreciate, that maybe people might look at the garden and go, yeah, this is nice, but there's a technical aspect to that which I think is underrated.
And that's one thing that if guys are working for me or if I'm doing a masterclass, I will actually make a point of emphasizing points on topiary, and I'll say, take the time to finish it off, get your little shears out, and get that last little leaf to form that point. Just spend the extra time to do that, because that's what's going to set it apart from someone else. That's what's going to make it look good. So yeah.
I wonder, so how much longer does it take to shape the edge? Because you think about how many square centimeters that is. Let's say it's 20 square centimeters, the tip of that, compared to 20 square centimeters on the top of a hedge. You could just get your hedge trimmer, like your battery powered hedge trimmer, and just done, and it's straight, because you practice. How much longer is that taking to do the top there?
Look, though, so I zip around those hedges now with a Makita hedge trimmer. When I was getting them into line, because they weren't always on that nice even slope. In fact, the hedge in front was level and half the size. So I've actually grown that up to suit the slope behind it. But the tricky part and the more time consuming part is when I step inside that parterre or inside the hedge and start doing those cones. And that's all handwork. There's not a lot of room in there to swing a hedger anyway, but I would always do that by hand. And I've got some really nice straight Japanese shears that I use that don't have to be, but as long as they're nice and sharp, I feel like that needs to be hand clipped. Yeah.
I'll tell you about, let's just jump straight into this. I was asking you about this before in preparation for this, but how much difference does it really make between a $400 or so pair of hedge shears to, say, your $100 to $200 range compared to, say, a $50 pair? Because I would feel like a $50 pair, $60, $70 pair kind of feels pretty good for most people. Like most people, we're talking about, I guess, keen hobbyists here or professionals, because most people are going to stay away from the $15, $20 Bunnings special. But a lot of people would think in their head, they'd go, it's just sharp pieces of metal, surely? Like, what would really be the difference between those ranges?
Yeah. I've never really played around with your, say your real lower end ones. I was trained on these, and when I say trained, that's what we used, and we did a lot of topiary and we did a lot of hedging by hand. So these are Barco professional range, P51s, if you want to get technical, and they're
P51. Did you say
P51? Yeah, and they're pretty standard in France. Pradines, Barco Pradines is a French company, and those big topiary gardens in Makita, France, you'll see all the gardeners using these, and they are nice and solid. You can really get a good sharp edge on them. If you have to cut through something hard, or you have to lay into something hard, because that is part of topiary, is actually maybe controlling the plant and cutting in hard to get perfection. These will do it, and they'll do it with ease. To answer the question, really, it comes down to the user, I guess. And I got so used to these that I didn't want to use anything else, and I actually got better at using them than a hedger. So I would use my hand shears
faster.
I would, yeah. And a lot of people don't believe that. A lot of people do not believe that, and it's I've put the timer on it, and it's true, because I would always come back after using the hedger, slight little whatever, and I'd get my hand shears out anyway. So that's different now. I've actually upped my game on the hedger, but then you got these things, which are your curved Japanese shears, Kihachi shears, curved, made by
what brand is that?
Hamano. They're Yoshioka Hamano.
How the heck do I spell that? I mean, we were talking about Topiary before, Topiary or Topiary, whatever we called it. I mean, that was too many syllables. You just fired at me.
Yeah.
So, from writing in Google, what is it?
Yoshioka Hamono or Hamono with, if you can spell Hamono, that's not how you pronounce it, but that's how you spell it for sure.
I found them.
Yeah. And
So
what are you
talking about?
They are the real deal. They are beautiful, beautifully balanced, nice wood. You know, you get your hand starts to wear a nice little spot in the wood, but you don't want to hit anything hard with these because you ruin them. And I send them back to Japan to get them tuned up. Actually, if I do happen to twist them or something, yeah.
So they're $414. For those who are not watching, on the Shokin store. I'm not affiliated with them at all, but they got them. And then there's a barcode here, which is on Forestry Tools. Again, not affiliated. This is just what's come up, and they're $155.
Yeah, I mean, they're not a cheap pair. They're certainly in the professional range, but that's what I would throw at my guys. If we're going to be hitting the ground, if we're going to be hitting sticks, if we're going to be picking up bits of bark or whatever, you don't want your Japanese shears around that. Or, you know, it comes down to the operator really. But either or, but I've got really used thanks to trying them out with Craig from Southern Cross when we did a festival at Topiary Gardens, Marrowby Gardens in New South Wales.
Yeah, we talked about that when he was on the podcast. Like that place is insane.
Yeah, and so I got to try them out, and straight away I lost all my preconceived ideas and bought 3 pairs straight away. So yeah.
And so, give you a bit more context here, because I can totally understand how for like a curved pair, and you're doing a lot of balls,
yeah,
like that makes sense to me. I'm sure that's going to speed up the process, and I'm also sure that say a company like let's go Fiskars or something like that, they're not going to get any money out of making a curved pair. You know, even if they made a cheaper pair, because it's just such a niche request, and so I can totally understand how for a curved thing you might want it. I've scrolled down on the screen here for those listening. I'm looking at the sort of straight Japanese hedges, and they're still 300, 340 in that range. Yeah. So do you believe that you're faster, you know, with say a straight pair of Japanese versus a good, you know, sort of $150 pair? Because a lot of people, they're looking at the work you're doing, and this is what I told you about before, but a lot of people, they love the type of work you do. They look at the clouds and the spirals and everything, the crazy stuff, and they're like, I'd love to do that, but to jump in at $400, you know, you got to have some context, you know?
Well, for starters, you have to create the cloud first, and you're not using them necessarily when you're creating the cloud. You're using it when you're trimming them after they've been created. You know, you're trimming that soft new growth off, and that's when they're really helpful when keeping that shape and getting around the curve. With straight shears, I'm honestly very comfortable with the barcodes as I am with the straight version of these Japanese shears, but it's just a nicer experience, I guess. And that's if you want to start getting a bit fancy, which, you know, let's face it, it's nice to have some fun when you're working. It's nice to have nice tools. And the only thing is that, you know, you have to keep them sharp. It's all about maintenance and keeping them nice, looking nice. Yeah. Not looking nice, keeping them nice, in good nick. Yeah.
Yes. Friends, I hope you're going well. I'm in the warehouse because I want to show you this. This is, amongst all the mess, the new background for the podcast for 2024. And maybe even slightly after Christmas, we might do a podcast with this. But I want to show you it because we're going to make some epic content for the next year. I've got a lot of plans. Can't tell you about them now, but they're super exciting. And if you want to be part of that, jump on the Patreon, keep supporting it. Genuinely, all this stuff is being paid by the people who support on there. I want to show you this as well. This is my fertilizer rack with all the Mash Play products from the Lawn Shed. Now, you can only get these products, which is exactly the stuff I'm using. You can see it's in the rack there. If you get a trade account, so sign up to a trade account, jump on there, you'll be able to get access to that sort of stuff because it's not on the normal Lawn Shed account. say you heard about us through the podcast and go through there. If you're looking for fertilizers, wedding agents, all that kind of stuff, that's where we grab everything. They've been awesome supporters of the podcast, and it's partly what allows us to do the cool things we're doing now. Let's get back into the podcast. So tell me about these Makitas then, because I would have considered Makita. I have some friends over here in WA who have used some Makita gear, and they've talked quite well about it and talked about how the hedge trimmers are light, easy to use. Another mate of mine with battery gear on their the whip snipper and things like that. But I wouldn't have considered Makita because they've come from sort of a drill brand. I wouldn't have considered them like that. Same. However, I also had a very interesting experience. I wasn't able to get Makita on the podcast, but we did Makers Month. And I had an interview with AEG. And I had the same feeling about AEG when I first started, that, this is like a drill brand. This is a circular saw brand. And they've come into gardening. And if you don't know, AEG, Ryobi, and Milwaukee are all in the same family. So I was kind of like, but then I talked to the guy who designs the tools, and like the mowers and certain other things are designed for Australia. And then I was like, interesting. Like, okay, there's more to meets the eye. And so it's very interesting also for me to hear that you, with your Japanese $400 shears, are getting Makita, that's it. Anyway, tell me about.
Okay, so look, I'm assuming I can mention brands and everything.
Yep.
I have tried all the brands. I've been doing this for a fairly long time. So I started with petrol, and I started with a steel. Well, I forget what it was called, like an HS80, HT81 or something. It was a big thing, but it had swivel handle, and I got used to using that. Then we switched to battery powered a while ago, and then I was playing with Husqvarna, and I was playing with steel again. But I bought a whole bunch of new steel hedge trimmers, and without even knowing, because one of my guys sort of said he likes them, he had one and he liked it. I didn't know they didn't have that swivel handle, and we had a few troubles with them. But once again, thanks to Craig and my little trip to New South Wales to the Topiary Gardens, the Merribee Gardens, I got to try them, and just one, the blade speed, two, they're pretty sharp, especially out of the box, super sharp. But the blade speed is amazing, and just the lightness of them, and this is also why I've upped my game. I've really upped my game with hedging in the last 2 years or whatever, since I've been using them, is because they've got increments, like there's the 2 increments on each side on the handle, and that allows me to do a lot. Just get myself in that sweet position where I just fly through hedges and nowadays, and it's just and I'm just doing this adjustment, and I've got a real flow going, without having to get into stupid positions, or even I don't have to jump the hedge to get on the other side anymore. So it's actually upped my game, and for those reasons, I guess.
Yeah, I can totally see, like, so because of the swivel handle, you kind of get into a groove that you'll feel like you're missing something. But also there'd be people who on the other side who never use a swivel handle, and then they change the position and all their muscle memory feels out of whack, Yeah.
I taught myself a new way of hedging, basically, when I got the Makitas. And I now teach my guys how to do that. We've got a little, we like to put a lean on our hedges, a little lean on our hedges, and then we do a slight, unless we're after square hedges, which some of our clients love, just a square hedge. But then we run around, put it on a lean, and run around and just put a lick, like roll the edge a little bit, or just put a chamfer, or and that just gives our hedges a little bit of style, and it doesn't take a lot more time to do. So it's an extra step, but it doesn't take a lot of time. So yeah.
I got given, or I got sent some stuff. Have you ever heard of the brand Greenworks?
Maybe.
So they're a big battery brand over in America, like a huge range, like crazy big range of stuff, like what's those, like, those gators you can drive in,
Are they
battery
doing?
powered
They're doing ATVs now, aren't they? That's where I've seen them. Yeah.
mini bikes and snowmobiles, not snowmobiles, but like walk behind snow machines for the US and a million and one mowers, and they've got ride on mowers and stand on mowers, all battery gear. And anyways, I had them on the podcast too, and they said to me a while ago, they were like, "Hey, look, if you want to demo some stuff, just let us know." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, send whatever."
Yeah,
Then
that's nice.
a couple of weeks, I know it is. A couple of weeks ago, I got a mower stolen off the back of one of our utes at Bunnings, and I was like, oh, "What do I do?" So I called up this guy from Greenworks. I was like, "Hey, when you said you might want to send some stuff? Well, now would be a good time if you're still keen." Because I just, yeah, exactly. And so anyway, they sent me a mower, and I was just asking for the mower. And with this mower, I got sent a telescopic hedge trimmer as well. They were just like, chuck this in. I was like, oh, okay, interesting. I've never considered a telescopic hedge trimmer before in my life. I unpacked it today because I've always used, in the past, I've used steel gear, petrol mostly. I have one of those steel hedge trimmers, the battery ones, whatever they're called. And, battery hedge trimmers just, it's a completely new world over the vibrations and everything. I think most people are understanding that these days. Anyways, but I've also had the combi engines. I've got a battery combi engine, and you just put the extension poles in, right? You got a tall edge, put the extension poles in. So why do you need a telescopic dedicated hedger? So that's what was in my mind, right? So they send me this telescopic hedger. I feel like an idiot, honestly, because I get this and I'm like, where has this been my whole life? I haven't cut a single thing with it yet, right? I literally got it 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago. But I'm like, my goodness, because you can adjust it. I think it goes about 3 meters, right? And again, I haven't cut anything with it yet. This is the concept of telescopic hedges I'm talking about, because you got the strap around your shoulder. When you're cutting vertically and you put it on a 90-degree angle to chop the top of your hedge, right? You could just adjust it to exactly the spot where the hedge is at, and then the strap takes all the weight. Whereas the bloody things I've been using for 10 years, you've got increments of a meter or whatever they are, 900 or whatever those extension poles are. And if you've got something in between that, you've got to hold it at an uncomfortable height sometimes. And it's a massive arm workout. And I'm like, why have I never considered a telescopic hedge trimmer? Because it's not like I couldn't have afforded one. Like you just have one for those specific jobs. So I feel like a bit of an idiot now, having dismissed a tool out of complete ignorance. Anyways, there you go.
Definitely we've got them. We've got the telescopic hedges. Lots of we do have a few troubles with them, but for me it's more about reach than they're handy when on the angle. I do some pretty large topiary, like pretty big ones where I need to get to the tip. I need them. But for me, it's about reach more than reaching to the top of the side of the hedge, reaching 4 or 5 meters, whatever, or however big your conifer hedge is or whatever. And then some of them are pretty wide across the top. So one I cut in with something small, because I'm up close to the hedge. So I cut in with a little hedge trimmer, and then I sweep across, and I can reach to the whole, reach right across with my telescopic. That's the main way I use them. I try to discourage my guys from doing, say, like standard balls or topiary from the ground with the on the angle, because I encourage my guys to get to eye level so you can actually see the shape of that ball a bit better. Because otherwise you end up with I find you end up with a bit of a teardrop or an egg sort of shape, which kind of bugs me a little. So I encourage them to get up, still use the ladder to get up at least to eye height, and you can use whatever you want after that, really. But yeah, they're definitely a important bit of kit. Is the pole pruners, or pole trimmers, we call them.
What are your thoughts on, say I was going to come work with you for a day, and I'm your employee, and we're doing like a pretty common hedge. Do you get a lot of viburnum over there? A lot of lily-pilly hedges. So, and let's say we've got more of a screening hedge, 3 meters kind of high hedge,
Mm-hmm.
If you're cutting the top, are you the sort of guy who's getting the ladder out to cut the top? Like, I'm not talking about the really fat ones that you're talking about where they're 5 meters deep or whatever. Let's say it's a 900 deep hedge, right? Or are you encouraging, if you got access from both sides, sort of putting your telescopic or your pole hedger on a 90-degree angle and cutting it from the ground?
No.
There we go.
100% get up on the ladder and cut your line in straight. Be confident about where you are in relation to looking at the horizon or looking at the windowsill behind you to get that level, and you're not taking steps and bouncing up and down as you're walking along. You're locked in, and you can sweep across, and you can use your last cut as your guide to keep you on a look. I know it's probably got its time and place where you might need to do that to get that little hair, or to get a bit you missed, something you can't reach, or on the back side of the hedge where you've got this fluffy bit, you put it on the angle and just cut. I do use it, but walking along with it on the right angle like that I'm not a fan of, really.
Well, I guess it depends on the standard that you want for the hedge as well, right? Like, is it a formal, really tight hedge? Is it just, your local dentist's car park and they just don't want it getting out of control? They don't really care how precisely straight it is,
Yeah. Look, if you don't have a ladder, and it doesn't really matter, so sure, do it. Yeah. That's what guess that's what it's for. It has other applications that adjustment certainly comes in very handy for me, but not for that application. Yeah.
Well, I basically don't do any of these tall hedges, but I did do one. For those who know, you might not know this, Craig, but most people who listen to the podcast do know that I didn't do any work in the field for about 2.5 years for some health issues.
Yeah,
so I did a hedge, I would say about maybe 6 months ago now, right? And it was the first hedge reduction I'd done in maybe 3 years, and it was a grevillea hedge. So it was. We just cut it down. Yeah, pretty tough, pretty thick, and it was very lumpy to start with, and it was probably about. So they wanted it cut at fence height, but the fence was on a retaining wall. So where I was cutting it from on the front side was on the ground. So I took the ladder, and this is the other thing that I can see what you're saying with the telescopic pole now. I took the ladder, and it was a pain in the butt because I had my handheld hedge trimmer, and you're getting up and you're cutting it. And then I had my extension pole, right? And I needed something in the middle because I had to pull my hand so far back to cut that next line.
Too close
and then it was comfortable, right? And the amount of times I moved the ladder, and because I hadn't done it in so long and all those muscles hadn't been worked, and somebody else quoted it. So Elliot quoted the job, and he's pretty accurate with his quoting. So it wasn't his quote that was wrong. It was my capacity and, wanting to get it right and just not having done one in so long. But it took me about 3 hours to do a job that Elliot had quoted for 1 hour to do, and it was just all this walking up and down and just up and down the ladders. And look, I was really happy with the job at the end of it, right? Like it was nice and schmick, and I don't regret spending the extra time there. But I'm always thinking about, like, surely there's a better way. surely I can just invent a laser to shoot off the top of my truck, you know.
So on that is I and my guys probably hear me saying it a lot. And sometimes I'm like, what's with my ladder placement today? You know, ladder placement is highly underrated skill.
Sure.
And anticipating where you need to be with your next, don't you move it too far, you have to go back again, you know, back down the ladder to move. I was doing a bamboo reduction the other day, which I didn't think I was going to be doing as well. It was just a bit too high for me to get stuck into it properly, so I had to reduce it quite a lot. And it was also up against a wall, and so I had to put my ladder in sort of. I will use tripod ladders, so I had to kind of stick it on an angle, sort of not straight on and not side on, somewhere in between. And I was in a bit of an odd position. I was cutting in with a small machine and then sweeping along with the bigger pole trimmer to reach across, and it was pretty hard going. And I was in a bit of an odd sort of position as well. I think I felt that, but it was a 38-degree day as well, which didn't make it any better. But ladder placement is highly underrated. Yeah.
What else do you think is so when I look at gardeners, right, there's a difference between, say, the difference between an average gardener and a good gardener, to me, is just attention to detail. It's not even technique, it's not even your knowledge. It's just being able to look back and be almost humble enough to go, oh, I haven't done that well enough, and go back and fix it up. And you get two people together and one has the proclivity to go back and fix up some problems. To me, that's average to good. What do you think takes someone from good to great, though? Right? You're looking for an employee, or say there's someone in, say, the Northern Territory who calls you up, hey, I want to get a contractor. What should I look for in a person that's going to go from good to great?
Yeah, okay. Well, okay. It's sort of basic understanding of level, a built-in level. It's understanding boundaries, and it's knowing when to trim hard and when not to. What plants to trim hard, what plants not to. And I'm erring on the side of trimming hard to keep things in line, and you're going to save yourself a world of trouble down the path. I did have a guy working for me for a long time who just kept, skimming across the top. His hedges looked awesome, but they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where I come in and go, and I have to cut it back hard, again, which is so. I think it's making good decisions, being strict on your hedge, not walking away from an unlevel hedge, and rather than always letting something grow up, it's maybe cutting everything down to level and keeping it there is more important. I don't know if I'm answering the question anymore, but
no, I'll dig in a little bit deeper, because how many years would it take someone typically to get that? Because you're talking about almost like a feel thing, because you can get a guy, and I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
with,
it's intuition.
Like,
yeah.
Because we get the same thing with lawns, right? There's sometimes where if you cut the lawn, say you're cutting it, let's use a rotary mower, you're cutting it on level 3 all the time. You get a little bit of extra growth because been a little bit extra rain, and if you cut it on 3, it's going to look furry. So it's going to look not furry, thin. Like it's gonna have some little bit of scalping here and there. And so you raise it to 4 because 4 is going to look better. And then 3 months later, you're at 5. And then 6 months later, you're at 6. And all of a sudden, a year into doing this lawn, you're kind of twice as tall as you used to. You know?
Massive thatch, and your edges are hard to. I don't do a lot of lawns at all. I don't even do any lawns really, but I think I get that. Yeah. It's the same sort of thing. Yeah.
So do you feel like that's something that you could teach to somebody who was receptive in a week, just showing them? Or is that something that really takes actual time out in the field?
Look, and this is when a gardener is, I had a quote about this that Michael, what's his name? Sorry, it'll come to me. Bates wrote the gardener's a gardener has to have intuition, and that can't necessarily be taught. If you've got that intuition, I feel like you're going to get that straight away. If you don't, then it's not. You feel like you're doing the wrong thing to the plant by cutting it hard. Sometimes you are, and that's when this intuition and the general plant knowledge comes into it, I guess. But I've got a guy at the moment who I'm sure he's going to get it. He's got a lot of things straight away in it. You know, he only came on board before Christmas. He does come from a little Japanese gardening crew, and he's not got a lot of. He's not a horticulturist as such, but I think he's just gonna get it. You know, whereas the last guy took 3 years of not wanting to do that to the plant. You know, thought he was doing the wrong thing, no matter how much. I'm like, dude, we gotta keep, this is the level, you know, we're not going to be able to get a letter in the letterbox soon if you keep letting it grow like that. So, you know, understanding boundaries and, you know, yeah. So it's about intuition.
Do you think it was hard for him to be the person who took on the responsibility if it didn't look so good? You know what I mean? Like, you cut it back a little bit hard, and it's just like, oh, I kind of know that I should be cutting it back harder, but I don't want to be the person who the client gets grumpy at, you know?
I think so. But, you know, and I did say it's all about me here. I'm the one that's going to wear that. I told you to do it. I'm telling you to do it. So it's, and you know, the client's going to be upset one day when we have to cut it back hard. So it might as well be today. Better sooner than later. But that is definitely why. He just, you know, wanted that hedge to look nice, not hacked. If you do it regularly enough, they're not going to look hacked though. I guess that's the reason why. Yeah.
If you had somebody coming to you today who, let's say someone listens to this podcast and they go, man, I want to work for Craig. And so they send you a message and you meet up with them, and let's say they've got a baseline, right? If you could telepathically just, transmit some information like you can, you know, a Wi-Fi connection or a Bluetooth download or something like that between the two of you, what will be the number one thing you just want them to get, the piece of knowledge that you've got that would just completely fast track someone's skill and knowledge and ability to make amazing gardens?
Yeah. All right. This is a hard question. I'm not really coming up with much, but I will say, don't follow old lines. As in, don't be guided by what is in front of you. Be guided by how you think it should be, what your level is. Because if the person hasn't trimmed at level and you're cutting this much off all around, plants don't grow evenly like that. And the last person who did that hedge might not have been doing it level straight, or you could be making it look better by using your own intuition and having confidence in what you're doing. That's one. I don't know how I'd transmit that telepathically, but
yeah, no, we got to get the Neuralink and Elon Musk onto that. But I was thinking, like, because I feel like everybody who we go get employees, and we talked about this on the phone before about how difficult it is to find good people. Yeah. And people have to transition their thinking from how do I find a good person to how can I almost make a good person, or train a good person, or hire someone who has the right attitude and then train them up to somebody who's great. And it's always stressful doing that as a business owner, because you're like, well, what if you leave? I've just spent all this energy training you, and then you go leave, and I've got to do it again. And now I've made your career better. But so there's all that balance. But then also, you get so busy as a business owner or as a contractor that you don't stop long enough to even think and go, what even is it that makes an employee good from a garden aspect? What even is it that I'm chasing? And that's one of the things that I've struggled with a lot over the years, hiring people. And I don't know how many people have worked for me at some point or another, but I've had so many interviews where, I sit down, I finish the interview, I'm like, oh, that was a nice person and this, and I could see myself getting along with him and that and blah, blah. 2 days later, I'm thinking about it and go, why am I even considering them? I didn't stop to think about what would make a good gardener, or you just, this person's nice, this person's this. And I think it's part of the problem. I'm waffling here, but it's part of the problem of why people they struggle with employees, because they never stopped at the beginning. And I certainly did this. You never stop for long enough at the beginning to go, what do I even want? And so then you don't even, it's like, I'm going out to fish. All right. Well, what do you want to eat? I don't know. I was like, catch a blowy. Well, success. You've caught a blowy. That's all you wanted,
Can I jump in, because I'm thinking of something?
Yeah.
It's like you what you need is someone to come into your gardens and not just see a good garden and do a good job in that garden, as in keep it how it is. It's like you want that person to think, right, awesome garden. How can I improve it? How can I make it better? What can I look for? What's wrong here? What that it can't be perfect. How can we make it better? And I think that is the question that a lot of people who work for you don't ask, because they're just working and they get to the end of the day and it's good enough for a photo. It's good enough for a photo of Instagram, but on Instagram. But it's I think if you're questioning what next, and so what's going to look like in 8 weeks? Should we spray now? Maybe, because in 8 weeks, it's we're going to get fungal disease. Or what's the weather doing? It's about how can we? And I think that kind of thought process is so important in gardens. It's about thinking about what's coming next and how you can make it better. So,
do you with your fungicides, fertilizers, things like that? Do you follow a written program? I mean, I'm sure you don't follow. Even if you did have one, you wouldn't follow it to an absolute T. But how much of it is that intuition, and how much of it is a calendar plan?
Well, with certain, I've got a small team, so we get used to that. It's about mastering your garden, and mastering each garden individually, and each garden's got its own set of problems. But you become used to that plant always gets, let's say that always gets powdery mildew, that always gets psyllid, that always gets scale around this time of year. We know that warm and wet weather, we're going to get powdery mildew on the roses, or in the vines, or in the orchard, or whatever we're doing. So I guess then it's just about that's about understanding seasons and understanding what comes when, and it's also about picking up cues. I noticed ants crawling up. There's a lot of ants around today,
Right.
Oh crap, here we go. Or why is there webbing in this cloud tree? That's webbing, to me, is always bad, right? It's either caterpillars forming little nests, or it's hardly ever just a spider web. It's about just looking at prompts and cues, but also knowing basically that it's going to happen, so you might as well preempt it. We do a lot of preempting. We do a lot of foliar sprays for health reasons, just for health sprays at the end of our visits. And as part of that, we can say, well, can we add a little bit of, do we need to put some pest oil on that, like eco oil or something to the ants are harvest or farming some scale here. So it's about, if we already know we're going to do a foliar spray, it's like, well, let's combat health and disease at the same time, and just keep on top of it, basically, rather than let it get on top of us.
Why would some people will know this, and you've said it as if it was something you've thought about a billion times, and so it's just normal. But why would ants clawing over a plant necessarily be a problem?
Generally, ants, I mean, not always, but ants farm scale. They like the secretion that comes from scale, and therefore they look after scale, and they kind of move them around. So when you see ants sort of crawling up, marching up the trunk of a tree, what else is there for them up that tree? Usually it's because they're farming scale. They're looking after these guys, and they're getting the honeydew, they call it, secretion from them. It's just a good sign. It's just a good warning sign that there's something going on there.
Yeah. No, that was something that I didn't learn until way too late. You know, and I like the idea of like noticing those little things because I feel like that's the kind of stuff that distinguishes one of the things that distinguishes the good from the great is noticing a small thing and acting on that. And even like if you don't have the knowledge, still acting on it in terms of research or in terms of, you know, like trying something, you know. So like, for example, I'm thinking about a specific client that we had, and anyway, we still work. It's not like we had because it's gone, but this is a story from this week where went to a job and it's been so hot and dry here in Perth, like crazy hot and dry. I've talked about it so many times on the podcast, but we go to this job, and typically this lawn thrives because it's a south facing lawn, so it gets the afternoon shade. It doesn't get smashed by that sort of 3:30 onwards, you know, last bit of the sun. But there's some patches that were going a little bit grey, and I every week I sit down with the gardeners. We'll go through their after photos because I don't go out on the tools with them for 99% of the jobs. And we're going through the photo and we're like, oh, you see this little thing. Just apply a wetting agent to that 3 square meter section, you know, like, you know, you could even technically, I mean, if you're desperate, you could just honestly, if they had a hose on a section that big, just get the bottle and pour out 2 or 3 mils onto the spot and then blast it with a hose to bubble it up everywhere else and try and soak that area. You know, for such a small little patch, like it's kind of those little things are the conversations that I'm having with the team to try and be like, that differentiates average and excellent, or good to excellent, because if we have even more massive heat, and thankfully we're in a cooler run now of high 20s, by the way, that's what cooler means at the moment. But it's like if we had another couple of 41s or 42s like we did 4 days ago or whatever it was, that section might get roasted and then it might die, and then the effort to get that 3 square meter patch of lawn back is just tenfold more, you know.
And you know, noticing that little off, that looks, you know, the rest of it looks good, but that looks that green is not the green that we're looking for. You know, what's going on with that, and investigating it. And that's what I think. You need to have that eye. You need to be asking those questions like, it looks good, but there's something up with that one. What is it? And I just did that this morning while I was clipping some balls, some Buxus balls in cloud design, some spirals. It's a pretty formal place, and one of them was just off color. You know, what can I do? Is that sprinkler? I just opened the head of it, cleared it out. Okay, okay, that's working. Give it some, what did I use? I just tried some bioguano, something, sea salt. Well, you know, give it something and let's keep our eye on it. Just do something about it rather than, you know, in that spot, we do get a lot of dog pee as well.
Yeah.
So, but to me, it didn't look like that. So here's that off color, you know, what's going on there? Investigate, think about it, and it can just be quite simple. Rather than waiting till it's too late. Maybe a 5-minute investigation will save that for you. And at the end of the day, your garden's going to look better and you're going to look better. So, yeah.
Literally, people will think you and go, that's a sexy hunk of meat right there. Oh, you meant from a business perspective. I'm just having a laugh.
There's no me looking any better. I'm afraid those days have gone.
It's downhill from now. I think I'm in the same boat as you. All right, what's the biggest thing that you've learned about maintaining plants? Because we're talking about like paying attention to these 1%ers and the ants and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But what have you learned in the last few years that was game-changing, revolutionary? Not necessarily in 100% a way, but in these little 1%ers. So maybe different products. You talked about the Makita or having changing that over, but is there anything else that's coming to mind where you're like, oh, that really helped me?
Yeah, there was, you know, and it wasn't that recently actually, but it's become popular now. It's become a thing, and I do a lot of work in a place in Adelaide called Unley Park. We've got a lot of big plane trees, avenues of huge, big plane trees. And I was working for a film producer, and his garden was relatively formal, but it was also struggling a lot. And I found that it couldn't all be blamed on irrigation. So one, check the irrigation, up the irrigation, improve irrigation. Still, Buxus hedges and viburnums, they were struggling. And I noticed when I mulched that the roots of the plane trees would come up and just populate that mulch as well. So I'm like, okay, poor plants have got root competition. Not to mention the plane trees are so big that they're this canopy. So there's light competition, there's root competition, and there's also, it's like the dry shade environment. So you get, a lot of leaf litter and mites and things like that. So health problems. So what I started doing was I sort of put two and two together. All right, the plants are struggling to get nutrients from the roots. The leaves are causing this dry, sort of hydrophobic or dried shade environment, and we're getting mites and whatever. So the one thing I started to do was regular foliar sprays, and back then I was just using sea salt power feed, like what's that, Thrive, or whatever. I don't mix it up a bit. And so I'd do a day in the garden, and then run around with a spray pack and give it everything a little bit of a health kick. If I noticed the mites, so I might add some whatever. And then I was thinking, why is this Buxus always? What is this thing that makes it go off like this? Is it fungal? I don't know. I'm no scientist. Maybe it could be.
Yeah.
So is it going to hurt to try a fungicide in my spray one day as well? So I started doing that. Started playing around, noticing, keeping an eye on what was happening, and I started to get better results. Not 100%, and that's when I came across this. It just made sense to me. Foliar spray, you're giving everything a bit of a health kick through its leaves, where it's having trouble getting nutrients elsewhere. You're taking the soil out of the equation, sort of, if you've got problems with the soil, and at the same time, you've got the opportunity to regularly preempt or combat disease. So that's probably one of the biggest game changers for me. Yeah.
So what are you putting in your foliar spray then?
Well, there can only be so much. You've got your fish emulsion. You've got your micro, whatever you've got. Anything's going to be beneficial. It doesn't have to be a strong fertilizer, but obviously it can be. If you want to really give it a kick, it can just be a health tonic, like you see emulsions or whatever. It's all about nutrition and cell structure as well. So certain things increase cell structure and make them more resilient to the impact of pests. So and then like a little trick, which I'm not going to say I use a lot, but if you're unsure, rose. Have you ever heard of like Rose Shield? It's just a basic product. It's got a bit of it combats your fungal disease, but it combats sort of your two main problems. Your downy mildew and your powdery mildew, or black spot and powdery mildew. But then it's got an insecticide in it as well, which probably isn't environmentally friendly. But you know what? If you've got a big problem and you're scratching your head, going, what is this? I just don't know. You're not. You might just be a home gardener or whatever. Well, okay, get your sea salt out, or your power feed, or your bioguano, which is like get something out with a bit of NPK, a little bit of this and that, and if you're putting in something like a rose shield, you're kind of covering all bases, and see what happens. And it's sort of like process of elimination. It's not necessarily rocket science. It's better to know exactly what you're targeting and trying to do it in a more eco-friendly way. But that's the thought process.
I even went to I bought some new plants today. They're right next to me.
Nice. You're at the nursery when I was speaking to you, weren't you?
I was actually. I bought some indoor plants from a local indoor nursery because I clearly don't have enough behind me. I need to get at least another 7. Now I'm trying to basically make this place forest in here. And anyway, I had a chat with this guy, and he's an old fella who's, you can tell he's been gardening since he was a kid, and he talks a bit slowly now. He's a little bit so he used to run this nursery, and it's brilliant little niche place. Most garden lovers would just love it. It's all these old greenhouses that have been there since forever, and they've got all these weird, not necessarily weird, but say a chain of hearts or something, a common indoor plant. They've got 3 varieties of chain of hearts, and you might go to your local Bunnings and you might be able to find 1 variety of alocasia, and he's got 7 varieties of alocasia, and he's got all the variegated, he's got all the fun, weird stuff there. And he's kind of taken a step back because of his age from running the show. And there's another guy who's kind of, doing it as well. And he's great too. But this old guy's one of these sort of, you wonder how much sort of wisdom he's got that hasn't been tapped into. But I was talking to him about this, and I showed him my vertical wall, and I was like, I'm having some problems with some of these plants, and the reason is that I was a bit dumb because I wanted to. I was thinking about colors. I wasn't thinking about water, and a lot of these indoor plants, they either love water or too much water kills them. And I've realized that I've put some plants next to each other that are the opposites. So you can't
water requirements. Yeah.
I can't water them differently because they're so close to each other, unless I literally set up a retic controller and had individual drippers to all, 70 plants behind me. Anyway, so I was trying to solve this. I was trying to solve this problem with him, and he goes, "Oh, that philodendron Rogo Congo you've got at the bottom corner there, you're going to have to move that soon." And I was like, I kind of thought that too, but I've had that for 3 years and it's kind of stayed that size. And he goes, when was the last time you feed it? And I was like, I basically don't feed it. And he was just like, how often do you eat? And I was like, depends how much I drive past Hungry Jack's. And, had a little laugh there. But he was talking to me about these indoor plants. I was like, like a lot of indoor plants are just forest plants, right? And they are grown on the bottom of a forest floor. What's on the bottom of a forest floor? It's like, an immense amount of time. I don't know how long these forests have been there, of just decaying leaf matter. Like, it is rich soil. And we've gone and taken that plant and we've put it in a concrete warehouse in a pot that is 14 centimeters or whatever, the size of the pot is, with some free draining soil so it doesn't get anything else. And then we're like, I won't. That's why they're naturally here. Well, I've got it is quite bright in here compared to a house for sure, but it's like, why I feed my lawns all the time, why am I not feeding the plants? And as you're speaking about your liquid feed and stuff, yes, we do feed our plants here in Perth, but I wonder, for me, because you're talking about, if you get a healthier plant, it can withstand drought stress. Depends how bad it is, but I guess. But drought stress, heat stress, pests, disease, the plant is healthier. So low levels of those challenges, whilst obviously there's an inflection point where you get 100,000 locusts on your tree, it doesn't really matter how many, applications of sea salt you've put down.
No.
But yeah, it is definitely something I was actually thinking about today, about that, just regular small things. And I might even just get a fertigation system, because
Well,
that
that was what I was
I'm gonna
thinking.
forget.
Yeah, sure, that would be great. Fertigation system. I've thought of that too. Like my dam has got some trout in it, and that feeds my nursery, my cloud tree nursery.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
and so I'm thinking, but I still have to. Obviously, I fertilize, slow release fertilizer a fair bit. But I was thinking that would be maybe I could do that. What's it called? Not hydroponics, but the other one.
the
Uh,
fertigation,
aquaponics. So
aquaponic.
using fish, growing fish, and using the fish poo to feed my nursery, and anyway, it's never going to happen, but it's good as it is. Yeah.
Yeah, how many good ideas do we have that are just the time and money and or motivation is not there? You could
Yeah.
do it, if you had some effort.
The years just fly by.
They do, but you're only 24, so like you got you got a long time ahead of you.
Yeah, I got my best years ahead of me for sure.
How do you feel? You told me on the phone, so you're 50, right? That's what you're
Yeah.
saying, not 24. How do you
50
feel
this year.
as in terms of the longevity of your gardening career? Because I know that everyone's different. Some people get to 40 in the way that they've worked, they've stuffed their body up. Some
Yeah.
people are smart about it, and you'll see it like the guy at this nursery. I don't know how old he is. I reckon he's close to 80, if not over 80. But he's still going, and he was potting stuff out the back. Obviously it's a little bit different. He's not cutting 3 meter tall hedges anymore. But like certain people, they last longer. Certain people, they don't. They really struggle. Have you been thinking about what's going to help you with longevity?
Yeah, definitely. But I only started doing this when I was 30,
Oh,
landscaping,
right.
and then went into landscaping. Then with this garden designer, where we learned how to use hand shears, back into landscaping, and then out on my own, sort of thing.
Yep.
So 30, now I'm 50. That's been 20 years, but I went pretty hard. Like I
Yeah.
didn't slow down, and I had one back injury in that time, a herniated disc, and started doing
Right.
Pilates. I used to be a gymnast. Look, long story short, I'll just brief background is I was a kindergarten teacher for like 8 years, and then I quit. I worked in record shops, and then didn't really want to. I needed to be outside and went landscaping, and that's then studied landscape design, and here I am, sort of thing. But now I've forgotten where we were. What was I saying?
We're talking about longevity. So you're talking about
Longevity. Yeah.
yeah.
So the back issue that put a bit of but that was like, oh no, what's going to happen? And I had 7 weeks off, but I discovered Pilates, and I also discovered that pain relief and drugs, nerve drugs, and that weren't for me. And so
Yes.
I was like, I need to get myself back into the way I used to feel when I was doing gymnastics, right? So I went hard with Pilates, and it really helped me. And all of a sudden, I'm doing handstands again, and I'm doing that kind of thing. And I'm solid as a rock up a ladder, and I'm not really worried about that. I do get the old, the tennis elbows and the sore wrists,
Yeah.
and that comes and goes. But really, I think I'm doing pretty well. I think the thing that scares me, I mean, I run rings around my young guys still, I think.
Yeah, it's funny. Oh, sorry, I cut you off a little bit there. So, but it's funny how you get some guys who, yeah, like they do at 50, 60, even 65, and then some young 20-year-old is just getting their backside kicked out on the work, by some guy
this is
who,
so hard.
yeah, it's 29 degrees. It's like,
Yeah.
mate, come on.
Look, but I went into it pretty hard, and wanted to learn, and also treated it like a workout. I wanted to be fit and whatever. So landscaping was a workout for me, but I was taking notes as I went, and I was taking notes a lot. I was looking at the designs coming in and breeding the plants and looking how they're put together. And I wasn't just pushing wheelbarrows, but like I guess my main concern now as a ranger is my skin, and I'm deeply concerned about skin cancer at this stage of my life.
Yep.
And that's, my dad's had issues recently, and my mother-in-law's had issues recently, and all doctors have just said to me that spot's nothing, but it's only a matter of time for you.
Oh, you get nervous.
It's more like it's going to happen, so don't stop coming in, don't stop checking. And I guess the more I look at myself, the more I go, well, I'm not getting any younger, and my skin's not getting any better either. So I'm a bit more concerned, because even if I reduce my workload, like don't do big hedges, just concentrate on the fancy topiary and trimming cloud trees, which is sort of where my niche is anyway, that's where I'm heading, with Head in the Clouds design as my other sort of business. That was maybe my sideline, and maybe where I'm going to design and just feature plants. Even if I do that, when you're trimming a cloud tree, it's going to take you 45 minutes to do one in an average sort of like 2 meter or 1.5 meter cloud tree. It'll take you 45 minutes. You're standing in one spot for 45 minutes. You're standing in the sun. You're not moving around. You're not dipping off to the shade. You're actually just getting fried, and that worries me. Yeah. So I'm worried about that as far as my health is concerned.
I've got some. I know a bunch of people who've been getting onto this hat. I'm going to put it on the screen. I know you love your fancy hat there, but there's this thing called an adapter cap. And I'm on a Facebook group called Lawnmowing Contractors Australia, and somebody posted up about this, and I'd seen people wearing them before, and I was like, this makes sense. So I wish I had some photos of someone wearing it, because apparently you can zip this up so it like covers all the way to your eyes there. I zoom in. So for people like with really dusty jobs on a ride on lawnmower or whatever, I've seen guys with like goggles, and they've got the adapter cap right up there, completely covering everything. And some people are swearing by them, hey, and they're like, oh, these things are amazing. I've never tried it, but I was like, for $42, man, like, and look at that. Do you reckon that mad pink would look good on me? I mean, I'm a married man, but you never know. You might need to still keep some good looks going there.
It's going to look better on you than me, I'd say, for sure.
I'd probably go for the grey, but
my silly hat isn't very smart, but I don't wear it all the time. I do have a hat, like a sun hat, but I'm a fly fisherman as well. I do a lot of fishing in the creeks and stuff, but I wear a head sock, and I wear that. I can wear that around my neck. Sometimes I wear it around my wrist and just shove it up on when I need it, so I can pull that up over my face as well. But really, that looks like a good solution. And my wife is always like, why don't you get a Legionnaire's hat, because your neck is fried today. And she's as worried about the sun as I am. But that looks, I'd wear that. I'd forego fashion to wear that for sure.
Well, it's a time of day as well. Like we talked about this off air, like, it's kind of that sort of 10 o'clock till kind of later in the afternoon where you're really getting fried. Or like, you may be working under the shade of one of those big London plane trees that you were talking about, and it's you're not out getting roasted, so it's options, isn't it? But the other thing that I think about, not being anyone in the medical profession at all, but I've heard a few people talking about like vitamin D deficiencies in people, and how it's almost like it's a weird thing, because our society's become a lot more work inside, office work, that kind of stuff. Like there's a lot of people who are vitamin D deficient, which causes certain issues. And then you get the people in our industry who they don't work inside all the time, and it's like I wonder where the line in the sand is, where it's like you've risked, like you've gone too far, too much sun, and now we're into skin cancer territory, or not enough sun. Like I'm sure there's studies on it and data and stuff like we could work out, but we need an app. You put a watch on your phone, and the watch has got a sensor, and at a certain point, the app goes, "Yeah, you've got 45 minutes left of this kind of sun, and you'll have your vitamin D, and you're good." And then it's like, "Oh, morning, a bit too much. This is skin cancer territory." So I should have patented that before I said that publicly on the air. That's a pretty good idea.
Because that vitamin D thing is a thing, and my wife works inside, and that's been an issue before. It's been mentioned before, but I'm pretty sure I've gone too far. I'd be on a very too far scale. That's why the record shop and the childcare, the kindergarten thing was probably a smarter career, but I couldn't be cooped up like that. So, anyway.
Well, you never know. What sort of mental health issues would you have had, or what kind of, like you talk about how you treated your gardening as exercise. Yeah, it's all like it comes out in the wash, like because people might say, morbidly, not to treat this lightly, but let's say someone got skin cancer and they died of skin cancer, and they say, "Oh, it was my career that killed me of skin cancer." Well, maybe if you worked as a checkout chick at Coles your whole life, you would have died of heart disease or something like that because you got bored and you snacked on all the Snickers. That's probably what I would do if I was, sitting there. Like I need something exciting. If I don't do anything outside physical, like it's not that long before I'm like, I'm twitching. I need to do something,
Yeah. Yeah, same. I like a holiday, but a resort holiday, I'm done. 2 days, I want to get out of there. I want to do something now. I've got to do something, So that's definitely outdoors was always on the cards for me. A job outside. I did work experience as on a sheep station. I really liked agriculture. I did ag science. I was always riding horses. I was whatever it was. I wanted to be a vet, but just didn't want to study. So whatever it was going to be outdoors, I think.
We maintain the gardens at a vet, and I think, some people it's their favorite thing, but here's some controversial Luke opinions. This shouldn't be controversial, but I reckon the two jobs that I just think I personally, as Luke Smith, could not enjoy would be a vet, right, or a midwife, right. And I was there with a vet, because a vet would be someone who loves animals. How much of their job is just killing animals? Technically, how much of their job is putting down old Betsy? Yeah, I don't. I don't spend too much time at a vet, but I had to put down one of my dogs, which I loved very much. And she was very young. She got parvovirus. It was just horrible, and many years ago. And it was a horrible experience. And my wife and I, we get all teary and emotional, and the lady at the reception desk got all teary and emotional because we were getting all teary and emotional, and because the dog was dying. And then, anyways, later on, reflecting on that, I'm like, I wonder how often that happens for that chick. She obviously was very empathetic with the people she worked with. I was like, that's almost like a brutal. So vets is the one side of it, and I was there for both of my children being born, and childbirths are not typically between 9 and 5, and so those hours are not necessarily the most fun. And yes, it can be. I can see the very rewarding side of it, but I was just like, practically speaking, this job is a nightmare. You know what I mean? You're dealing with someone who's in absolute agony for a very long period of time, and they can get not that my wife was abusive or anything, but they're very grumpy, and they're you're just trying to push a baby out, and it's a lot of I'm just thinking, I love that you're doing this job and I'm not doing this job, because I'll give me 40 degree days out in the sun on the tools rather than 1 a.m. in the morning, screaming lady, hours and hours and hours of difficult, and then at the end, a little bit of, here's a cute little baby, and then you just give it back to them up.
I think the vet's got the better deal there, for sure, because you don't have that person screaming at you, and whatever you do is just still hurts. So whatever you do is wrong. You know, I'm sure they get yelled at a lot. My last two vet experiences, one I had to put down a sheep, but I knew I was doing the right thing, and the other, same as you, my old dog. I've got a new 3-year-old dog now, but that was heartbreaking. And you know, the vet came out to put him to sleep, and I was like, "I'm sorry, little buddy," and you know, he was like, "You don't be sorry, you're doing the right thing," you know. So I think I just think he had the better. He made me feel better about myself, and I toughened up and let him go. But I reckon the vets have got they know they're doing the right thing, whereas and they can convince you that they're doing the right thing. Whereas childbirth, I think that poor midwife gets in a lot of strife. You know.
Yeah. There's a few jobs like that. But I think some of the jobs that would be seen as less desirable, I'm the personality that would fit them. Like I'm thinking like truck driver. And I drive at the moment, I've been driving a lot to Esperance and back. And when I was 19, I drove around the country for charity. I was a support driver for some guys who were cycling. So I've driven around the country at about 28k an hour. And they were sort of like 5 to 10 hours typically in the car every day for 4 months. Well, you know, we had breaks, but pretty much for 4 months. And once you do that, it's like anything in the car's fine. Like I haven't been bothered about a long car drive for ages. And I've thought about it and I was like, I would get fat for sure driving, you know, a truck all the time. But that's so easy. Like 7-hour drive from Esperance, and I'm like, oh, I'm done. Like I'm not done, like as in cooked. I'm like, I started and then bam, I'm done. I'm already here. You know, it doesn't feel like it's ages. Things like that. And I'd be like, I could make this work. And I reckon there'd be a bunch of women listening to this going, give me midwife any day of the week, and a bunch of guys too. But they'd be like, truck driver, no way. And then some people who were like, I can't believe you said that about midwives. You know, it's the most fulfilling job ever.
One of one of the best gardens that we do. She's a midwife, and you can just tell that she's a super person. She's a special, you know, just a good person. So I'm sure it just takes a good person, and it's a you know. All the hours and everything, well, they wouldn't have chosen that job if that wasn't what they wanted to do. So, yeah, thank God for midwives, I say.
Yes, true. Thank God for midwives. Now, moving on from this and back to gardening, but on the same kind of topic, we're talking about like jobs that we enjoy. How have you gotten? Is that the word? Acquired? How did you get the amazing jobs that you do? And like, is there? I'll chuck it back on the screen. The Instagram, and people again. Reminder: Hedgehog Gardens. It's just full of just beautiful gardens, right up there with some of the best stuff I've ever seen. There's you and your lovely hat there. But it's not very sunny that day. But so what did you do, or what were there specific things, moments you can look back on that took you from maybe doing a couple of nicer jobs here and there, but then this thing happened, and that's when I got some momentum?
Right. I guess, look, I learnt my trade and I did the hard yards, and working with this guy who, you know, got me, we were doing everything with hand shears, I think got me into that right sort of field. My name didn't really help. Hedgehogs doesn't really give the impression of, hey, fancy gardens, but that's not me. I've made my life more difficult. You know, it's like if I was called pretentious gardens, I'd be getting those big fancy gardens. That would be the first thing that people would choose. But I guess what I did was one, well, the whole time I was landscaping and learning, I'm the kind of guy who's like, hey, you know what? Even if I don't, it's not the most fun job, and gardening isn't the most fun job, but whatever I do, I'm gonna do it properly. I'm just gonna do it the best as I can, and I'm gonna try and do it better than the guy next to me or the guy down the road, and that was my motivation to every time I looked at what I was doing or the garden I was newly coming into, I would be like, how can I improve this garden and make it look awesome? And I guess so. There was just always upping my skills, and just until people took notice. People in the street just went, "Why doesn't my garden look like that?" And so then I pick up those guys. So it was all word of mouth, really, and I don't think I could have done that any better. And the word of mouth always speak. Maybe you get the clients you want then as well, through word of mouth. Not all the time, but sometimes. I'm not the best businessman. I've told you that. I should have played that a bit better. But the other thing was surrounding myself. So being associated with people in the industry. And I'm a member of the Master Landscapers Association, and I'm a judge, and I enter the competitions, and I've won 6 awards or something like that, 6 or 7. I don't know. They're behind me there.
I don't even know. Oh, that's just like nothing to me, just.
Well, it's not. It's not really. It's it's just that it's not like you. It's not like you're the best in the world.
I'm just teasing you.
I guess my first one, I felt pretty good, yeah. But what I did was surround and that people take notice of that, I guess. But then just surrounding myself or being around people in the industry, and sort of like good designers and people will then say, okay, who do I want to put my garden that I designed in the hands of? And once you've brought a few designs from babies up to fruition, and the designer's like, thank God he was looking after it, because some people just let them go, or some people don't understand the design or how it was supposed to look, or just don't look after the garden in general properly. I think surrounding myself with good people in the industry, and just like not big noting myself, but maybe quietly going, hey, I'm here. I'm actually not a very social person usually, and so being a part of an association isn't really me. But I am part of this association, and it's good to be able to show what you do in front of your peers, because a lot of gardens are just behind closed gates, and no one ever gets to see them anyway. Instagram is great for that, though. So I guess they're the things: word of mouth, doing everything 100%, making sure, just going the extra mile all the time, and that speaks for itself. And then just surrounding yourself with like-minded people, or people who are also maybe at the top of their game in the industry.
I think you just said something that was really, like, you slipped it through, but I was like, that's a really good idea, which is getting in contact with landscape designers. Because the thing is that, like, I've had a chat with a few of them through the podcast and over the years of just being in the industry. And it's always hard to find someone who has the mentality that you just described, the 1%er approach, right? And being able to just go, really caring about the job. And even what we talked about probably half an hour ago now about the technical side of things and stuff. So if you are that person, and you're that person, you have that, and you're like, I can't find these great people, I reckon there'd be a bunch of landscape designers, right? And maybe not the most famous ones. I don't think messaging them is going to probably result in much, but there's so many designers out there, there's lots of people I want to have on over time, that I reckon if you message them 10, 20, hey, in the area, I'm a maintenance guy, these are some stuff I've done, I really do care about my work, they might go, I'll take a chance on this guy. and then that's when your quality of work and word of mouth comes through.
Yeah. Although I did try to crack one landscape designer who I really liked her work, and I kept running into her work, and she wasn't interested in. She was like, "No, I'm not answering your call." But anyway, so that's fine. But that didn't work out for that one. But like I've done landscape design, and I understand if I'm putting on paper is actually what that garden's going to look like when it's done, not what it looks like when it's put in, when it's installed. So, and it requires the person to understand that design to bring the plants up in like that hedge is going to be there. This hedge is going to be up here. This can't grow on top of that. It's going to squash that. Some things grow quicker than others. It's like that the person who's maintaining it is actually orchestrating that finished product, and that's a skill, and that's where being strict and having that thinking ahead and having the intuition and understanding the design, it all goes hand in hand. So that's really what a good gardener is, and that's the person you want looking after your designs.
Well, I had this conversation with Ashley James in the first podcast we did, where I said, "What's more important, design or maintenance?" And he sat on the fence, like the coward he is, and he said, it's both, and obviously there's an element of truth to that. But I obviously, being a maintenance guy, I think maintenance is more important because maintenance is the longevity. So if you had rubbish design but great maintenance, at least the plants are thriving. It might look a bit higgledy-piggledy, and you've got some yuccas and agaves in there and some diosmas and what else is rubbish? Like it might be a really average-looking design, but the plants are healthy and green. Whereas if you had, especially here in Perth, 2 weeks of a broken retic system, and you could lose a lot of plants. At the moment, last 2 summers have been nuts. So I'm on the maintenance side. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Okay. So coming from, I'm a designer and a maintenance guy, but I do a lot more maintenance. You can't make a. I'm going to sit on the fence, aren't I? But you can't make a what's the saying? A silk purse out of a sow's ear. Like if the design's not good, or they've used rubbish plants or plants are just not going to work on the coast anyway, or we try and use Western Australian natives in the clay soil in South Australia. Like it's just. I think the design has to have credit, have some kind of. It has to be a good design, but I think the responsibility. I think the responsibility of bringing that design to fruition lies with the gardener. So does that sitting on the fence enough for
you? You're being too sensible. You need to be more controversial. I'm asking this to get clicks, Craig. Come on. No. It's
definitely the gardener.
Yeah. Landscape designers are useless. Who would even hire one? You don't need them at all if you have a good Oh, they do. And they just are so pretentious and pompous and just think way too highly of themselves. No, you are. It is the sensible answer, but I think you can take, just to dig my heels in here. And it's not something I really care about that much. It's more like an interesting thought experiment. But you're right that if you had absolutely rubbish design, but I'm kind of hoping that, people aren't that stupid. I'm kind of thinking like a buffalo lawn surrounded by kangaroo paws. If that's all you had, it'd be, if it was healthy, it's still healthy. It's still okay, and it's uninspiring and it's not exciting, and the world would not be a better place if we didn't have designers. But if you had your most amazing design and someone really screwed it up and it all died, And that was your two options. That's all you had. You had to live at the amazingly designed house and everything's always dead and covered in aphids and scale and stuff. Or, it's simple, but at least it's alive. I'm 1%, probably 2% on the at least it's alive side.
Yeah. I've definitely saved a few gardens by just being proactive and like looking over the fence in between visits or something. So, and realizing that the irrigation, there's a fault in the solenoid or something. So, yeah, and that's a reality. And if I wasn't there, the garden would be dead. So, yeah, sure, gardeners.
Let me ask you another somewhat controversial question then. What are the things that you see other garden businesses do that make you cringe, that just frustrate you, that are they're unprofessional, they're unintelligent? It's like, why would anyone do that?
Oh,
Because I know you're going to try and be diplomatic here, and to push you further underneath this bus is that a guy who has the type of attention to detail that you have for those kind of spirals and clouds and stuff, and you're hypercritical of your own work. The truth is, those type of people are also very critical of other people's work. They may not say it, but you notice the flaws in your work, and you notice the flaws in my work too. So what are the things you're driving around? You're going, I can't believe someone did that. Oh, this frustrates me. You never say it out loud, or maybe you're, too professional to ever call them out. But here's your chance to be unprofessional.
Okay. So I can always tell by even if it's just a standard lollipop, the standard ball, which is standard lily pilly or something, which is I don't know, a bit naff, but they're around. If you can't reach it and you're just clipping away from the ground because you can't be bothered getting your step ladder out and getting up to eye level and actually being able to see the shape, and you leave that ball in a like sort of teardrop shape. It's a bit same as what we were talking about before with the extender pole. Like if you just walk along your hedge and do these ones, that bugs the shit out of me, to be honest. And you don't deserve to be called a gardener if that's what you do.
Okay, I'm gonna find a photo of my own work here and see if you can critique me. What's no? Is there anything else?
Way too harsh.
No, it wasn't. It was good because here's the thing: is that like people who are listening to this, you're gonna be like me right now. Like I'm trying to tell you that. Oh, where's this photo? I can't do two things at once. I'm trying to tell you my. Give you the opportunity to give me feedback without technically roasting me. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to find. I've got one photo, but I can't find.
If you've got a pair of standards, I keep coming back to them because every gardener comes across them, whether they like them or not. Standard, ficus or lily pillies, and you're not at least making an attempt to get them similar size, as in similar proportion, and balanced, and make them an actual pair rather than one huge one little one. Who cares? It's just how they are. Then you're not doing your job, as far as I'm concerned.
I've got to find this photo. So okay, I'm going to put this one on the screen, and I'm going to ask you to critique that whilst we just give me a second. This is not the photo. This is of the same garden, but I'll set the scene for you. When I was a young whippersnapper, you're going to see this photo and you'll be like, damn, he was a young whippersnapper. Like, this is from back in the day. All right, here we go. Okay. When I was a young whippersnapper, I was quite proud of this garden that I was doing. Yeah. And look how young, this is back when I had potential. Now all the potential's gone. You just are what you are. But there's a time when you're young people and you have potential. And I was very proud of this. And to be fair, in the area that I was in, this was quite a good one. But I want you to tell me what you're looking at that, because whilst it looks like I'm still working in this photo, I'm pretty much done. This is my This is my marketing photo, not me actually
finished
working
product.
at the same time. Yeah. So tell me, roast me. You're free to roast me because I'm happy to learn, and I'm going to try and find the photo that I really want you to see.
So I can't. Yeah. Okay. Right.
You got to zoom in a bit. Is that zoomed in enough? Do you want me to move around anything?
What are you showing me? The hedge or the
well, yeah, anything. Like, is there anything you're looking at going, oh, if you were my employee, I'd be sending you back because I like let me roast myself here. This was a finished product, right? And now I look up here. If I go into this corner, look at that. I've missed. Oh, back in the day, mate. I told you I had potential. This is how I got my wife. When I was young and I was fit, and I was like, do you want to get married? She was like, yes. And then that was before she had any better judgment. And smartest move. People get married young because you snag the girls who are outside of your league, before they come to the better judgment.
Is that jasmine on the wall, on the fence there? Is that right?
No, that is a what do they called it? A bloody... It's an olive, but what's the name I'm looking for?
Espalier.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so you know what? I would have liked to see that even along that cap, cut along that line, everything under the cap, not some above and not some below, but
yep,
that's a small thing. I like that you're using hand shears. It's showing good attention to detail.
Did you notice what brand they were?
I'm looking. I can't see this very well, but
they're sorry. It's probably the internet's transferring. They're $60 or $50 Fiskars. They are Fiskars.
Yeah, they look like Fiskars to me, and a lot of people use them. So a lot of people.
See, you're being diplomatic. I'm asking for a roast, and he's being too nice, people.
They're shitty shears, but and you could have got the Espalier like nice and straight. Apart from that, I can't really tell, but it looks like you've done a decent job on the hedging. So
okay, I think I've found the photo. I've just got to get it up. But I used to be, this is something that you said. Hopefully, I can put it on in here. There we go. Look at the rule I'm breaking. Whoops, I've done something stupid. What did I do? Oh man, I'm having technical difficulties, people. Might need to put some hold music in. There, can you see that?
No. Yes. Right.
Can you see me earlier in the podcast? You were saying, and you use hedge trimmers on balls, you don't get perfect balls. And look at me using a hedge trimmer on a ball, and it is not a perfect ball.
And can you see that angle? That's why. That's because you're at the eye level, and that's a fail in my eyes. Yeah. That's bad.
I was so proud of that garden back when I used to do it in the day.
It looks nice. It's fun. But that's what we're saying is that that's the difference between. That's what we're aiming to just make things a little bit better, I guess, and learning how to do that. So you probably know that you should get up your step ladder now and try and get up at eye level so you can see the shape a bit better. And that's probably what you should be doing.
I love how you're like, you still don't want to roast me. You're still being nice. Yeah, I'm on his, I'm on his podcast. I better not say anything. No.
Yeah.
No, but because the reason why the reason why I want to talk about this stuff is that I would have really appreciated. So this photo is 2017. You can see it on the link there. It's a 2017 photo. So this is 7 years ago. My business is 10 years old. I was 3 years into business at that stage, and nobody told me what to do. I'm all self-taught, right? So the feedback, what I do with this podcast, or what I like to do with this podcast, is make myself jealous that the podcast, I couldn't listen to my own podcast when I was 22 years old, 23 years old, because there was nothing like this on the internet back then. And I know 22-year-old Luke would have loved it to have somebody just, the messages that, or the lessons you've put in this podcast. And I would have then gone to the job next time, and I would have gotten on a ladder, without ever being embarrassed, and nobody confronted me. and I would have done it differently the next time, but no one ever told me, so I just did it that way because I thought, well, I've got a hedge trimmer. I'm just doing it this way. You get what I'm saying, right? It's a free education, which is why the roasting has value to it, because it's not like I'm not offended. This is me 7 years ago. I'm not showing you my stuff today. I don't think I've cut a hedge in a while, but anyway, there's a value to it, right?
Yeah. Well, exactly, and that's the best thing about this whole Instagram. And as much as I sort of tried to avoid it, and I'm not that great at it, it allows us to show what we do, and also it allows you to look at other people's work and go, it's okay, but do I like it or not? But I definitely love that one. Look at that; that's perfect, and then that makes you up your game. So, it gives you the bar or the scale to looking at other people's work, which normally you don't really get to see unless you're critiquing other people working the same street as you, I guess. But yeah, it's good that we share knowledge and learn from each other's mistakes, for sure.
I've got a few more questions that I want to ask you before we wrap up. We're at 1 hour and 40. Some of these conversations.
Yeah, really?
Wow. Yeah. And think about how much we talked before we recorded, and the phone call earlier today. We've, we're not even running. But there's some. I want a question now. There's illegal answers to this question, in my opinion. The question is, before I'll tell you the question, and then I'll tell you what you can't say. The question is, what plant would you like to never see again in your gardens? Like you're just sick of it. You never want to see it. Either it's difficult to maintain, you just think it's ugly. Now here are the answers that you cannot answer because they're cliche. Yuccas are not allowed to be answered. Agaves are another one that I have. Diosmas. Okay, that sort of stuff. Yeah. Okay. Once you get past the real obvious, right, the real frustrating, what are some plants that every time you go to a property, you're like, oh, this bloody thing again?
Yeah. All right. I'm going to be not controversial, but I might sound a little bit stuffy even. So, Juniperus chinensis, Spartan conifers, you might know them as, typically in spiral form or cone form. I'm over them. I never want to see. I do a lot of them, and I've revamped a lot of them. But there's a lot of places who call me and say, can you come and do my spirals? And they are the most. They've been trimmed horribly their whole life. They barely resemble a spiral anymore. They've always got borer. They're bloody spiky, sticky, horrible things, and I don't want to ever see one ever again.
Do you know that actually?
Really nice one. I like the nice ones as long as.
So if you have like this Instagrammable photo, but I get what you're saying, because those spirals, right? Like, how long does it take? So let's say you're starting with your base plant like this, right? Well, maybe a bit more mature. So something like this. You're starting with something like that, and then you've got to turn it into this. There's so much eye detail, because it's not like a string line or something. You might have a real wavy hedge and you go, I'm just trying to string line this to get it straight. How long would it take you to get it right?
Well, it's actually not, first of all, you have to start with a nice tight cone, right? So, and then you need them to be at even height. So a lot of that work needs to be done in the nursery, healthy plants, nice thick foliage, and then you need to start trimming them into shape, which is for some people the easy part or the hard part, I don't know. But, I like doing it, but I've started a few from scratch from baby plants, and I've sold a couple of pairs of Spartans that I've created from scratch, right? And that's where the hard part comes in. And, I was never really that pleased with them. And it took years, took over 5-6 years. And whoever bought them obviously liked them, but I'm just like, nah, uh, you can buy them. You can buy them from their nurseries. Push them out in good numbers. It's what happens to them after that that is depressing and depresses me. And it's just, it turns out to be a fashion statement gone bad. And it's
Okay, I
partly
see.
due to some gardeners that don't look after them properly, partly due to their inherent health problems, and partly
Yeah.
due to just they're spiky and sticky and hard to cut. So yeah,
What about,
yeah.
so what would you put as a replacement? So obviously, I mean, Buxus is the obvious one. Is there anything
Mm.
else that you could do a spiral with that isn't as painful?
Buxus spirals are pretty cool. Um, what else is there? I did one with a bay tree on a
Oh wow,
street.
really?
Yeah, grew it from scratch. It was a design that I did. I did the greenscape, and the owner said, "I want a bay tree," and it's like right out the front. I'm like, that's going to look bloody horrible. So what I've done is I've sneaked it into a huge spiral. That's on my Instagram page, and I just sneaked that in year by year, and that's been a work of 5 years now, I think. And now it's this enormous big base spiral. So base spirals, they get scale a lot. So watch out for the ants on them. And another one that I like, I've seen a really good example of, is actually lily pilly, and I think lily pillies do a really amazing soft. It's got soft foliage, and it's just I've seen some really amazing lily pilly spirals. So I've got a couple of big cones out in my nursery that I was just trying to look at, but that I might try my neck if I ever try spirals again, because I'm strictly clouds at the moment. I might try lily pilly. I'd say obviously they have their, you've got to get your psyllid resistant, blah blah blah, but like a backyard bliss or something like that. But yeah, lily pillies do a good spiral. I'll say that.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get at, because Buxus is not common here, and they're so slow growing. And I
Yeah.
reckon there's a bunch of people out there who would be like, I could go to a nursery, get myself a tall something else, bay or lily pilly, and start the process now.
Mm-hmm.
How much would it
Yeah.
how much would it cost to buy a a high effort plant like that? So say a spiral or a cloud. If you're doing it now, I'm assuming that you're going to be a different price point than a mass produced nursery, but I guess they don't really do. I don't think I've seen a cloud in a nursery unless I'm just gone to the wrong nurseries. But what would what are you charging for? Obviously different sizes and stuff, but some people might be interested in they've got some money and they're hobbyists listening to this, going, I wouldn't mind spending some money and putting a cloud somewhere in my backyard.
Yeah. Look, it's a bit of a weird market, I find, and the pricing takes away the fun of it for me as well, because I'm not that business sort of guy. But now I
Mm-hmm.
realise I've sold a lot cheap, and they'll be awesome plants now, and actually be worth, in my eyes, a lot more now. So look, a nice plant that's well formed. Um, I guess you're looking at um, between 1250. There's 1250 and $5,000 is what I'm selling them for, on a sliding scale, and I'm saying the average is about two to 2.5 grand for a
Is
good
there
cloud tree.
actual? So here's the thing that people like yourself. We talked about this off air, so I'll update everybody, because otherwise this will be a 17-hour long podcast. But you did it for the love of the result, and maybe a few years ago, or quite a few years ago, I don't know when, you got some great business advice, and it really helped you take your business to the next level, because you realized that you weren't really earning, enough money to live, I guess, the life you wanted to live. And I told you the story, which I've told the podcast before, about one day I was in Subway and I had a really bad year. Around the time that I was doing those hedges before 2017, I think, somewhere around there, I had a
Yeah.
bad year in business, and tried some employees and things hadn't worked, and I lost money that year. And I remember I was in Subway, like buying a Subway sandwich, and I was like, I would have been better off just working here in Subway. And so there's a lot of people who are very business orientated, and they go into gardening they think about efficiency, and they go down the path of maybe more of a contractor who will do 15 lawns in a day. And they do take pride in their work, but they're not interested in spirals and things like that because, there's not the same amount of money in it, perhaps, because that's what they're thinking about. But then there's other people on the other side of the spectrum who, would almost do the most amazing work in the world for free because they love it so much. They'll go to a place like Hedgehog Gardens or whatever it is, and just the experience of being able to cut that, they'll do it for free, And you're kind of more in that second category of person. So for someone who hears the price of this cloud tree and goes, $5,000 for a tree, how many hours has gone into that? And at the end of the day, is it actually a profitable enterprise, or is it like 1,000 hours went into it and I'm getting 5,000? I'm making $5 an hour from this, or something like that,
Yeah, I wouldn't want to put a price on it, an hourly rate on it. But with the plants, I normally use advanced plants. So try and using plants that I've grown, I've bought and then held on to for 5 years before I'm even starting pruning them. And then before they look like a cloud tree, it's another 3 years. And before they look like an awesome cloud tree, it's like so you're already looking at 13 years or 15 years of, for that plant. So for me, typically I get an advanced plant if I can, 9 to 12 years old, and then it's 3 years after me stripping it back and trimming it 4 times a year, and plus keeping it alive, repotting here and there, and so they're definitely worth $2,000, but people don't see that, don't see the
No, that's what
value
I'm
in it.
getting at.
Yeah. So that's about the cloud trees. It's not really a good money spinner, but it did put me in the position of being able to use my own plants in my own designs, and also being able to offer a feature plant, and then it also gives me the possibility of going back and seeing that, being paid to trim that plant and see it to fruition and moving forward into the awesome cloud tree that I always wanted it to be. So yeah, like I guess I started getting into it. Was more of a hobby, but also something that I started to get. That I couldn't really buy many of them, or the ones I was buying, I still had to keep for 3 years before they were any good. To going to look good in the garden. So that's when I started jumping on it and just using. I've got 20 acres here. I've got water. I thought, let's go. I had the opportunity to get some big plants, and it's worked out well. It's helped me. It's helped my like that side of my business, which I really like. I've got to do a whole lot more of that. So it's improved my work life possibilities, I guess. That side of it I really love. Yeah.
Have you ever had one that you loved so much, like it was really, really beautiful, and then you sold it and you regretted selling it?
Yeah. Sometimes they go to nasty people. I don't like that. But that's not so. It was an awesome one. So cool, and it's also on my Instagram, and it died recently. And
Oh, what?
it was such a simple. It just died because there was no water, and
Oh my
and
goodness.
and it was a frustrating thing. And then we replaced it with another one of my favorites, and I'm like, just don't, just look after it.
That's. I don't know if I'd want to be giving you one of your favorites. Yeah, you can have one of the average ones now. And it's like when the kids want a dog, and they're like, well, we'll give you a hamster first, and if you don't kill the hamster, you can have a dog again. I'm not giving you my good cloud tree again.
Yeah, they're all different, and some are pretty. Some don't turn out that well, And the ones that turn out well are the ones you've got history with. Yeah, you at least want them to go to a good home. That's for sure.
Oh man, I can imagine. And on that solemn note, I think it might be time to. Well, actually, maybe should we finish on such a sad thing? You worked on something for so long and it just dies. Oh man.
you know, it happens. So, I don't even know if I answered that question properly. I don't know if that's not, where it went.
I don't even
We were
remember what
talking
the
about
question was.
the landscapers coach telling me that I should just go and work for someone else. All that did was plant a seed for me and say, like, I'm not busting my balls and putting my heart and soul and, working my fingers to the bone for this much money. And it just sparked the fire inside me. I had people saying I should just put my rates up, and I'm like, I just can't keep putting my rates up. And surely that's not the answer. But that's not necessarily what I did. I sneaked them up slowly, and I didn't really lose any customers. I lost a few, just, but really, I think it was just I worked harder, and I had the fortune of being able to employ people, um, and I picked up jobs that didn't necessarily suit the standard I was looking for, but we were busy, and we still had the good jobs as well. And I just started earning some more money, and it hasn't simplified my life. In fact, I'll probably go back to, let's just do cloud trees, feature plants, and design. That's probably where it's heading back into. I need to take the foot off the pedal, and maybe if it means earning less money or whatever, but I need to start to enjoy it a bit more. It's, it's a hard slog, and the last few years since COVID have been just flat out and ridiculous. Um, so yeah, I think with our business coach, I could do with a lot of business coaching, but somehow I managed to just improve my wage to. I'm pretty happy with it now, but I'm not. It's no easier, that's for sure, to keep earning what I'm earning. Um, if anyone could tell me the magic solution to that, apart from getting rid of clients and downsizing, which means earning less, I'd be grateful. But um, you know, I'm happy for where I've got, based on hard work for sure.
Well, I think for me, I mean, I don't know if this is relevant for you at all. I'm thinking about the audience who's listening to this, because 10 years in business or whatever, like for me, the copying McDonald's as "Would you like fries with that" has been really helpful, because the way that I view it now, all people know now that all we do is packages, and so we bundle everything together. But the way that we used to do things would be like, say you're going to cut a hedge, because that's what we've been talking about. I might charge a competitive price to cut the hedge, and then I'd be like, oh, I can fertilize the hedge and it'll be $32 after, right? Oh, I can put some wetting agent down as well and it'll be $46. And the client might be like, oh, yeah, let's do that every second visit, right? And it takes me 5 minutes to fertilize and it takes me 2 hours to hedge. And it just boosts my hourly rate up. But I was really doing it for lawns, because that's really what we've done the majority of. But we'd be like, hey, well, we can aerate the lawn as well, and we charge a really high hourly rate for aeration, because the client's got to pay $120 to hire the aerator, and they might need a trailer just to get it. So it's a $40 for a trailer. It's going to cost them $160, right? So I might come in and go, oh, we'll charge you $110 to aerate your lawn. Oh, fantastic! It's cheaper. It takes me 7 minutes to aerate the bloody lawn, because it's 40 square meters, but it needs to be done. And your options are that you go and buy a bloody, hand aerator that you stand on like a spade, or you hire the machine, or you just get us to do it.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully your irrigation's been installed deep enough that you don't do that. Well, you can definitely do it with a pitchfork, though, that's for sure. But that's the sort of stuff that I don't know if that's relevant for you. And product applications and stuff. I've talked about this on the podcast. Oh, you go.
Yeah, no, it is relevant, and I guess that's what I did a little bit, but I've always been doing that anyway. But maybe just charging stuff appropriately, and actually charge. Sometimes I didn't even used to charge for that kind of stuff. I just threw around a bit of fertilizer. That's okay. But now, I go through 2 pallets of my favorite fertilizer every season, and obviously I make money on that. And when you're talking 2 pallets of fertilizer, you're talking some some good money. Yeah, and so it's all about that. I sell a few cloud trees, and I get the work for trimming some of the cloud trees. And I don't know how I've done it, but there's been a great increase in my. Hasn't been all that deliberate. But I guess also my wife is a bit smarter than me, and it's like sick of seeing me give away my ideas and my information for free. So we charge for consults, and we don't just say, I just don't go around there and give it all to them for free, and they get someone else to
How
do
much
it.
are we charging for the podcast? He says after 2 hours of talking about gardens for free. No, yeah.
But
I would say as well. Sorry, the other thing I think is really underrated is the sorry, mate, my next door neighbours are going in. Open the door. Church says we're going for too long, but the other thing I think is really underrated is a barricade application, which is a pre-emergent that prevents weeds for about 6 months. So we've been using
I
it
heard
in
that
lawns.
on your podcast. I made a note of that actually. Yeah.
Oh, mate, I wish I had seen this before. Hold on a second. Give me a minute. All right, we're back in. Sorry, people. I got a delivery, and my neighbor was like trying to get my attention, and I was like, "Oh, what's he doing here?" Yeah, I've got a good neighbor. Anyways, sorry, people. Barricade. Another thing that I dropped the ball on, not dropped the ball on, but before I started my business, I did a course because I used to be a gardener at a school. I was a head groundskeeper at a school, and they did a weed control course, and they told us about all these products. And the guy, he said, "Oh, there's this new thing called Barricade. This is 12 years ago, maybe now. Oh, this newer herbicide called Barricade. It's really safe. It prevents weeds." And he goes, "But it's really expensive, and you may not get the value from it for the school, right?" And so I was like, "Oh, okay. There's stuff that prevents weeds." I didn't use Barricade for maybe 7 years after I learned about it because I just always had in the back of my head that this is expensive. People, it is not expensive because it's such a low application rate. Per application, it's really cheap. So as long as you've got enough applications, you can pay for it. But it's about 200-300. Back then, it was patented, so it was more. Might have been 350-400 for a smaller amount. But that is because it really works. You can say to people like, "Hey, I can put this down, and it'll prevent basically 90-something% of weeds that grow from seed will be prevented from that. So your cooches won't prevent your things that grow from bulbs. It won't prevent." But stuff like that, I was like, man, I wish I knew that. Like back to what we talked about with you critiquing my hedges. Those are little things. Like if I had known, these extendable things don't allow you to quite hedge trimmers, pole hedge trimmers don't quite allow you to get that perfect circle. Back then, I'd be like, oh, it's not very circular. I don't know why. I'm trying hard. I just don't know that knowledge. But those little things, man, like they're game changers.
Yeah. So Barricade's a pre-emergent, right?
Yep.
I heard on another sort of someone mentioned on another podcast somewhere who owns a irrigation shop that they sell so much more, herbicides, but people don't. No one buys pre-emergents, but everyone, he uses glyphosate or whatever, or your what's the other one?
Your bow and arrow or something.
Bow and arrow and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Fusillade.
Yeah. Selling so much more of that when a pre-emergent is, and that's when you start thinking like a gardener and start thinking ahead of the game, So, but I could certainly do with some tips on lawn and weed control, but I don't like weeds in my gardens, but I do have some. Recently, I've been using some sort of bushcraft, or I know people who are into bush regeneration, and they have to spray a lot of stuff. Well, I've had a problem with Casuarina cousin on a coastal garden, and they're fully matted, but they actually came with a lot of oxalis from the nursery. But I was just super stoked that the Casuarinas grew so well. but then obviously the oxalis started growing right up through it and became
Yeah,
huge,
pain in the butt.
visible.
Oh,
Yeah, what do I do about that? And then, so I've I've met these guys in the bush because I do a few gardens up near me in the bush, and I've got acres of bushland as well, and I'm into
mhm.
that. So he's like, you need to get methyl furon and overspray at a 0.2% or 0.1% rate. So it's like a few grains of methyl furon in 10
Yeah,
litres.
yeah,
But literally, and I was like, no, I am not doing that. Like how I'm not overspraying my natives to kill the, and
yeah.
and it really worked. So that's a feather in my cap. Something I've learned and probably would never have tried. So there's another tip for anyone out there. But you know, that's we live and learn, and you take risks and you get results, or sometimes you don't. Yeah.
Well, mate, I think we're going to have to wrap this up. We're at 2 hours and 5 minutes, which is nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good score. Yeah.
It is.
Well,
I love it when like we have these sorts of podcasts and people just it's just an easy conversation. It flies through, and because it's just they're the ones that people are going to listen to as well. But it shows that like there's so much knowledge and wealth of knowledge out there that even after 60 something podcasts or whatever we've done is not crazy numbers. But I've been in the industry for essentially my entire working life, and I've talked to just about as many people in the industry as anybody else has. And we still come into this podcast going, oh, look at all these things there are to learn, and look at all these things that I didn't know about, and all this sort of stuff that's so interesting. And that's what I love about doing this podcast. And I can imagine that there's a bunch of people on here who are fairly new to the industry who just got some major shortcuts. So thanks for coming on, Craig.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Yeah. I can't believe we've spoken for this long, but we haven't beaten Ashley James, but
no, we actually
3 hours.
I can't do that because my children will be going to bed soon. And, I have to say it's 5:40 here, and so like 6 o'clock is kind of getting to bedtime, and we need to be an actual father. I can't talk about gardening all the time. But no, mate, thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me. Cheers.
All right, see you guys at everywhere. I'll see you in the next podcast.